The first time everyone at work laughed and I laughed with them. I had absolutely no idea what was funny. I understood every word they said, which somehow made the whole thing even more confusing. There was no difficult vocabulary, no unusual accent, and no sentence that sounded especially fast. Still, everyone suddenly burst out laughing as if someone had delivered the funniest line of the year. I looked from face to face, hoping someone's expression would explain the joke to me. It did not, so I did what nervous people sometimes do when they desperately want to fit in. I smiled, made a small laughing sound, and hoped nobody would notice that my eyes were asking for help. Unfortunately, that was only the beginning. It was Friday, and I had been at my new job for exactly 3 weeks. I was still learning people's names, figuring out where everything was, and pretending I knew how the office coffee machine worked. At noon, our team carried our lunches into the break room and gathered around the long table by the window. I sat near the end, close enough to be included, but far enough away to quietly observe. My plan was simple. Listen carefully, smile at the right moments, and say something when I was sure it made sense. For the first few minutes, everything went perfectly. People talked about the weather, a delayed project, and the construction outside the building. I understood all of it. I even added, at least the noise stops after 5. Maya nodded and said, exactly. That tiny success made me relax. Then Ben walked in carrying a bowl of salad. The room became strangely quiet for half a second. Everyone stared at the salad. I stared too, although I had no idea why we were staring. Maya raised an eyebrow and asked, a salad? Are you feeling okay? Ben placed one hand over his heart and said, I'm turning over a new leaf. Laura looked at him and said, who are you and what have you done with Ben? Everyone laughed. I understood every word, but my brain immediately imagined that the real Ben had been kidnapped. For one very strange second, I wondered whether Laura was joking or genuinely concerned. Then I noticed that everybody else was laughing, so I laughed too. My laugh came out a little too late and a little too loud. Ben pointed at a salad and said, I can be healthy. Jason took one look at him and replied, that's what you said before the vending machine incident. This time, the whole table lost it. Maya covered her mouth. Laura almost dropped her fork. Ben shook his head and said, the machine started it. That made everyone laugh even harder. I had no idea what the vending machine incident was, but it clearly had a long and glorious history. I laughed again. This time, I tried to make my laugh sound more natural. I gave a small nod, as if I personally remembered the entire vending machine incident. That was my mistake? Maya turned to me with a smile and asked, which part got you? My mind went completely blank. There are questions you can answer with basic English, and then there are questions that expose your entire performance. This was definitely the second kind. I looked at Ben. I looked at the salad. I looked at the vending machine in the corner as if it might quietly give me the answer. Finally, I said, the part about the machine. The words sounded weak, even to me. Jason tilted his head and asked, were you here when that happened? Before I could answer, Laura said she started 3 weeks ago. The table went quiet again. My fake laugh was now sitting in the middle of the table like an unwanted extra plate. I felt my face getting warm. For a second, I considered pretending I had received an urgent message. I even glanced at my phone, but the screen was completely dark. There was no escape. Then Maya asked gently, did that go over your head? I knew the words go, over and head, so naturally I looked up at the ceiling. Maya saw me look up and started laughing, but this time her laugh felt warm, not mean. She said, sorry, I just mean you didn't understand the joke. I took a breath and decided to stop pretending. I understood the words, I admitted, but I think I'm missing the context. Nobody looked annoyed. Nobody rolled their eyes. Ben simply nodded and said, oh, that makes sense. It's an inside joke. I asked, can someone fill me in? Absolutely, Maya said. But Ben has to tell it. Ben sighed like a man who had been forced to carry a terrible burden. Then he began. Several months earlier, Ben had announced that he was giving up junk food for an entire month. On the very first afternoon, he went to the vending machine to buy a small bag of almonds. The machine took his money but refused to release the almonds. Ben pressed the button again. Nothing happened. He pressed it 5 more times. Still nothing happened. According to Maya, this was the exact moment Ben began negotiating with the machine. He leaned closer and said, look, I'm trying to make a good decision here. The machine remained silent. Ben continued, don't make me go back to chips. At that exact moment, 3 candy bars dropped into the tray. Not the almonds, 3 candy bars. Ben looked around, picked them up, and whispered, "I guess this is a sign." What he did not know was that Laura was standing behind him with her phone. She recorded the whole thing. By the end of the day, nearly everyone in the office had seen the video. In the video, Ben opened 1 candy bar before he even reached his desk. His healthy month lasted approximately 4 hours. To be fair, Ben told me, the machine gave me no choice. Laura replied with a perfectly straight face. We reviewed the footage. You had several choices. Everyone laughed again. This time, I laughed because I actually understood. The image of Ben politely negotiating with a vending machine was genuinely funny. I said, "Okay, now I get it." Maya smiled and said, "See? You just needed the backstory." Then Ben added, "For the record, I still don't trust that machine." I asked, "Are you serious, or are you pulling my leg?" The table laughed again. Ben pointed at me and said, "That was the perfect question." I was still not completely sure whether he was serious. But at least this time, I was part of the moment instead of watching it from the outside. After lunch, Maya walked back to our desks with me. She said, "By the way, you never have to laugh if you don't get the joke." I admitted that I had been worried people would think my English was bad. Maya shook her head. "Humor is hard," she said. "Sometimes it's the words, but sometimes it's the history, the tone, or the timing." That sentence stayed with me. I had always assumed that if I knew the vocabulary, I should automatically understand the joke. But office humor often depends on things that are not written in a dictionary. It might be an old story everyone else remembers. It might be sarcasm, where the speaker means the opposite of the words. It might be a familiar expression that sounds strange when you take it literally. And sometimes the joke is funny only because of the way someone says it. Maya taught me a few sentences I could use the next time this happened. The easiest one was, "Sorry, I missed the joke." What did I miss? It sounded honest, relaxed, and completely normal. If I understood the words but not the situation, I could say, "I feel like I'm missing some context." If people are referring to an old story, I could ask, "Is that an inside joke?" If the conversation moved too quickly, I could say, "Wait, back up for a second." If I wanted the whole story, I could ask, "Can someone fill me in?" And if everyone had already explained it, I could simply say, "Oh, now I get it." None of these sentences made me sound foolish. They made me sound interested. More importantly, they gave other people a chance to include me. The following Monday, I got another chance to practice. I was standing by the coffee machine when Jason walked in looking exhausted. I asked, "How's your morning going?" He stared at the coffee pouring into his cup and said, "Living the dream." The words sounded positive, but his face looked like he had not slept since Thursday. For a moment, I did not know how to respond. Then I remembered what Maya had told me. I smiled and asked, "Is that the good kind of dream or the Monday kind?" Jason looked at me, paused, and then laughed. "Definitely the Monday kind," he said. I had not repeated a memorized answer. I had listened to his tone, noticed his expression, and responded to what he really meant. That tiny exchange felt like a bigger success than any perfect grammar exercise. By Friday, I was looking forward to lunch instead of rehearsing possible answers in my head. We gathered around the same table. Ben arrived a few minutes later with another salad. This time, nobody said anything. Everyone simply watched him sit down. Ben looked around the table and asked, "What?" Laura said, "Nothing. We're just proud of your personal growth." She said it with such a straight face that I almost believed her. Then a delivery bag appeared in the doorway. The driver called Ben's name. Inside the bag was a large order of fries. The room went silent. Ben looked at the salad, looked at the fries, and said, "Balance." Everyone started laughing. And before I had time to overthink it, I said, "There he is. We were starting to worry about you." For half a second, everyone stared at me. Then the whole table cracked up. Ben pointed at me and said, "Now that was a good one." I laughed too, but this time I was not copying anybody. I knew exactly why it was funny. Even better, I had helped create the moment. That lunch taught me something important about speaking English at work. Understanding every word is not always enough. Real conversations are full of shared memories, hidden meanings, facial expressions, and unfinished stories. Missing one joke does not mean your English is bad. Sometimes you simply arrived after the story began. So the next time everyone laughs and you have no idea why, you do not need to fake it. You can smile and say, Sorry, I missed the joke. What did I miss the joke? You can say, wait, back up. I think I'm missing some context. You can ask, is that an inside joke? You can laugh at yourself and say, that went right over my head. You can ask, are you serious or are you pulling my leg? And after someone explains it, you can say, oh, now I get it. That's actually pretty funny. These are not emergency sentences that interrupt a conversation. They are invitations that let other people bring you into it. And most people are happy to explain when they realize you want to understand. You do not need the perfect laugh. You do not need to pretend you were there for a story that happened 6 months before you arrived. You only need one honest question and enough courage to ask it. That is often how an awkward moment becomes a real conversation. And sometimes it is how an outsider slowly becomes part of the group. If you have ever laughed without understanding the joke, you are definitely not the only one. Come back and listen again whenever you want these expressions to feel more natural. And if this story made your next office lunch feel a little less intimidating, stay with me for the next real-life English story. Until then, remember, if you missed the joke, just ask what you missed. You might end up laughing for real.